All right, everyone, it's time to talk about the rebirth of a nation. A few of you will get the cinematic reference, by the way. First movie screened at the White House, if I remember correctly. Right now, we have a rebirth of civics in the United States. It's an imperfect one. It's one in which the ideology is not as puristic as it was maybe prior to the Civil War period. Not as libertarian, certainly, as back then. But it's definitely a civic revival. We have, for example, over the last couple of decades, other than Trump's brief four-year term, we had a civic decline for the most part. Sweeping crime, lack of a border, you had Obama defunding NASA effectively, and things like that. Which actually in the end turned out to be a good thing, arguably, because now Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos are compensating for it, along with that third company that nobody ever talks about. But we have a revival in the country, I think. We actually have more unity, arguably, right now under populistic banner than you had for several decades. In the wake of the fall of the Soviet Union, the United States became decadent. We were at our peak there at the end of the 90s. Then things started to go sour. You have the dot-com bubble bursting, you have 9/11, the beginning of the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, creeping mission creep in Syria and Egypt and Libya and everywhere else. And the United States began to become a diplomatic laughingstock, basically. Under Biden, things reached a crescendo, basically, as far as corruption and stupidity went. And that's the last blast, I think, of high-level globalism. People have rejected it, and I think that that's a very good thing. The wokeness, the reeing of the liberals, the taming of the shrew sort of thing, has become basically a facet of modern culture. We see the same thing in tech. I'm highly optimistic. We'll be talking about Biden's farewell address separately. He basically casts a very dark picture of the future of the United States. Well, you're going to fall to oligarchy and tyranny and all of these other things. I see quite the opposite. The free market is compensating for the mistakes of government. We are rebuilding our civic structure to the point where the id poll that divided us, that was led by liberals and by leftoids, which aren't quite the same thing, but kind of, they overlap. That's beginning to die away. Even some lay liberals now are embracing the concept that id poll needs to go away. Now, mostly it's for politically pragmatic reasons. It's like, well, it's no longer working, so we're going to jettison this. The Bill Maher's and so forth of the world saying, are trying to warn the Democratic Party. This is no longer a good idea. It's not working anymore. It's not that they're ideologically opposed to the concept of manipulating people. It's that they realize the manipulation has worn off. It's no longer working. Their hypnotism has died, effectively. So what you have right now is a populistic revival, a nation dedicated towards actually enforcing its border laws. I would say this is a positive thing. It will not be perfect, and it will not be easy, and it will not be cheap, but it is possible for us to do basically anything that we want. It is possible to conduct meaningful diplomacy with other countries. We need to speak softly and carry a big stick. Trump has already shown us he's pretty dedicated towards that singular goal. He showed us this in North Korea. He showed us this before in Eastern Europe and in Russia as well. Although in Russia, he spoke rather harshly because apparently he threatened to bomb Moscow. So I think that he knows what he's doing with regards to that as well. A different culture, different strokes for different folks, basically. It's the rebirth of a nation. The old shrieking left that could simply stamp its feet, pound the table, and cry, and get its way all of the time from big corporations, etc., no longer has the power to do so. And I see Trump as the central figure at the bottom of this. But he's not the only one. You see this with some of the tech billionaires. There's a reason why the most corrupt leftoids and liberals right now are rambling about people like Elon Musk. Biden, in his farewell address, which again we will counter-address in a moment, of course, there's an oligarchy growing, these tech companies. The same tech companies that have created monopolies and duopolies now for decades and finally came around to the fact that, maybe we shouldn't be censoring everyone off of our platforms. They may only be doing it for capitalistic purposes. It's for personal gain. It's egotism more than anything else. It's, hey, I want more money, I want more engagement. But it still serves a positive function. This is something that we hadn't really seen for the most part until the last couple of years. As neoliberalism has worn out its welcome, you've seen it replaced by a more populistic mentality. It's more liberty-loving than before. And now, of course, we have the anniversary of the United States as of next year, and we're going to have what I believe will be a great civic revival. At the Iowa State Fair, at the Iowa World's Fair, rather, there's going to be like rotundas for every single state. You're going to have like a White City sort of moment for the United States for its 250th anniversary. I think this is a very positive thing. This is the sort of thing that we need when we're talking about adding new states. So the possibility of admitting Puerto Rico or Guam or whatever, the possibility of buying Greenland, which is theoretically possible. First, you have to pull them out of the European sphere. When we're talking about things like that, it's a message of optimism and expanse that we have not seen for quite some time. Basically, throughout most of the Cold War, the United States was in a holding pattern, and it remained in that holding pattern after the Cold War technically kind of sort of ended as well. And it's basically like, okay, we can't expand any further. This is the order the way that it is. We're not allowed to expand territorially. We're not allowed to expand economically. We have to give money to other countries. We have to be party to all sorts of international treaties that hamper us. We have to play nice. Well, that's not how the United States was built. It was built by fire and sword. That's just the truth of it. That's how nations expand. It was built by diplomatic strategery, as George W. would call it. It was built by people that were inventive, that thought outside of the box. I think that that sort of spirit is returning. I'm very optimistic about the next few decades. I don't think that it'll end with Trump, by the way. I have a feeling that considering the disarray of the Democrats and the rise of MAGA populism in the Republican Party, you're probably going to get at least one more MAGA presidency after Trump no longer is capable of running. That makes me optimistic. It's the rebirth of a nation. That's about all. Peace out.